Hi, I'm Lisa Murphy, and today's topic is Mother Goose is on the loose, how nursery rhymes are not just for circle time anymore. And the idea here is that we're going to recite a couple of nursery rhymes together, and then I'm going to show you some activities that you can put into your classroom and extend it outside of circle time. But the first order of business is making sure that everybody actually knows the nursery rhymes. Not everybody knows the nursery rhymes. Many of the people I work with don't know them, and you can't assume that some of the kids that come into your classroom, you can't assume that everybody knows them. So my first suggestion is that you get this book, The Real Mother Goose, because it's got a lot of nursery rhymes in it. And this way, if you don't know them, you can teach yourself. And this way, you can have it as a resource for the kids in your classroom. But you don't have to jump into the nursery rhymes right away. You can actually start by just starting to read books that rhyme to the kids and get their ears kind of accustomed to listening to that rhyming pattern. I especially like this one, Each Peach, Pear, Plum. And the reason why I especially like it is because not only does it get kids used to hearing that rhyming and that rhythm and that repetition, but it starts to expose them to some of the characters that they'll meet when you start doing fairy tales and nursery rhymes in your classroom. So I'm going to read it to you. Each peach, pear, plum, I spy Tom Thumb. Tom Thumb is in the cupboard. I spy Mother Hubbard. Mother Hubbard's in the cellar. I spy Cinderella. But that's kind of a funny page because it only rhymes in a couple of states. Cinderella's on the stairs. I spy the 3 bears. The 3 beds are out hunting. I spy Baby Bunting. Baby Bunting's fast asleep. I spy Little Bo Peep. Little Bo Peep is up the hill. I spy Jack and Jill. Jack and Jill are in the ditch. I spy the Wicked Witch. The Wicked Witch is over the woods. I spy Robin Hood. Robin Hood is in his den. I spy those bears again. The 3 bears are still hunting. They spy Baby Bunting. Baby Bunting's safe and dry. I spy a plum pie. Plum pie is in the sun. I spy everyone. So that's one of the ways that you can get it going. The first rhyme, though, that we're going to jump right into is Jack Be Nimble. And I'm going to walk over here so I can show you some of the activities that I'm going to demonstrate for you. The poem goes like this. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jump over the candlestick. And 2 very easy ways that you can extend that out of the circle time area is by doing 2 different things. The first one is crayon melting art. Crayon melting. This is a crayon melter. Actually, it's just a warming tray, but we had to cut the cord because we almost accidentally set the Boston Library on fire, but that's a story I'll tell you another time. But you plug in your warming tray, and then on top of it, you can put either some regular paper or some foil or some wax paper, and as you set it down on the table and you plug it in, you're gonna be sitting right here. You put the paper on the top, and then the child can rest their non-dominant hand right here on this hot pad, and then they'd be holding a crayon with their other hand. And of course, the tray is getting warm, and as they color on the paper, that crayon, it's gonna start melting all over. It's very soothing, it's very calming, and it's a wonderful art activity that you can extend out of Jack Be Nimble. The other one that I'm gonna suggest for you is adding, very simply, some birthday party candles to the props that you put out for your Play-Doh. I have a regular batch of Play-Doh here. Kids like to squish it, and they like to pound it. And so one of the things we're going to do differently now is take the idea of a candle and put it out. They can pretend now to do birthdays. They can pretend they're Jack be quick and Jack jump over the candlestick. They could try that as well. The next rhyme that we're going to do is 1, 2, buckle my shoe. And it goes like this. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. 3, 4, shut the door. 5, 6, pick up sticks. 7, 8, lay them straight. 9, 10, a big fat hen. And a couple years ago, we had a little boy in our class, and his name was Curtis. And for whatever reason, Curtis would always recite this poem like this. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. 3, 4, shut the door. 5, 6, pick up sticks. 7, 8, lay them straight. 9, 10, I got a big fat tummy. And nobody really knew why he did it, but every time we would say this poem, that's what he did. And it got to be where all the kids would look at him and they'd laugh because they knew that Curtis was going to stand there and stick out his tummy. But the main reason I think it was probably hilarious because the kid was like this big. He was a little itty-bitty guy, and he had no belly at all. And he'd stand there and he'd start shoving out his belly, and it pretty much just made us all laugh all the time. So with this one, an obvious extension is the idea of shoes. So I have an art project for you that I'd love for you to try, which is shoe painting. And of course, you could do this right on the floor by putting some paper down, but you can also change it up and do it at the table where the children would actually be putting their hands inside of the shoes and making shoe prints right on the table. So you could do it on the floor or you could do it right on the table. Shoe print painting. And I'm going to walk back here for the next one that we're going to do, which is Mary, Mary, quite contrary. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells all lined up in a row. And a science exploration that you can do after reciting this poem and teaching it to the children is something we have demonstrated right here for you that involves celery and also flowers. And what we've done is we've taken daisies and we've put them in liquid watercolor. We have some magenta liquid watercolor and some blue, and then we use some purple as well. And when we put the flowers in originally, of course, they were white. We bought them at the grocery store. And then the color comes up the stem, and in about 2-3 hours' time, it will actually dye all of the flowers that you put in there. You can use daisies, you can use roses, you can use carnations, you can use whatever you have, and you can color the flowers. You can also, like I said, do the celery. And here you can see how the celery, all the way up, the leaves have all turned blue. And on this one, they've turned purple. So you can take the idea of flowers and garden and do some science with it. Right up front here is an activity that you can do for the Crooked Man poem. There was a crooked man who walked a crooked mile. He found a crooked sixpence besides a crooked style. He bought a crooked cat, which caught a crooked mouse, and they all lived together in a little crooked house. So what we've done today is we've set up one of the activities that you could very easily do in the classroom. We have some blue tape that we've put on the floor, and you can do this in your kitchen, you could do it down the hallway, and invite the children to walk on the crooked line. Of course, you could walk forwards, or you could challenge them to maybe walk backwards, or maybe you could walk on your tiptoes, or maybe you could spin, or maybe you could hop. I'm sure you could find a bunch of different things that you could do to encourage the children to be moving their bodies here on this crooked line. The next one that we're going to do, I'm going to walk back to the table behind me, is Rockabye Baby, which is more of a song, I think, really, than a poem. I think that's how most of us sing it. Rockabye Baby. I will sing it like this. Rockabye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle and all. And I think the idea of a lullaby, it sounds so sweet and so loving, but then you actually listen to the words to that, and that's kind of traumatizing if you think about it. The baby's falling out of the tree. But the obvious extension here, at least for me, is bringing baby dolls into the classroom. And I have these dolls. They're called Lots to Love babies. And I do realize they're totally naked, but I like to point that out to you because they're all plastic all the way through. So it's really easy for you to be able to put these babies right into the water. We like to do baby washing. So we would set this out in some nice, warm, soapy water and let the kids wash the babies. And even though our adult brain might wonder what the intrigue was with this and like how come kids spend so much time doing it, children will wash babies all morning long. And they're washing them and they're washing them. One time we did a program, it was a mixed age program. And one of the little girls that was in the environment, I like telling this story, she was about 18 months old, and every time the older kids would go and do this activity, she actually freaked out. She had a little toddler meltdown, and she would freak out, and she'd run over and she'd take all of the babies out of the water, and then she would keep going about her business. She never played with them. She just took all the babies out of the water. And one day we were watching, and we were trying to figure out, why was she getting so frustrated about it? And then we really stopped and looked at the water. And we noticed that the water was soapy. And we wondered what would happen if maybe we put this activity out, but we didn't put any soapy water in it, if we just used regular water. So one day we did, and we just set out babies in regular water, and the little girl played with it all morning long. And the staff and I got together and were like, what do you think that was about? What do you think that was about? And without overthinking it and being, too in-depth about it, we were thinking that actually, in her little toddler world, the idea of getting soap in your eyes, which is something she has probably had happen to her, and she was not comfortable, she was actually worried that the babies were, in pain or something, or getting soap in their eyes and that they didn't like it. So whenever she was on site and we did baby washing, we made sure not to put soapy water in. The other thing I like about these dolls, And I'm not going to do it for you right now, but they get filled with water, and so you have to let them dry, which means you have to pop their heads off, which sounds kind of gruesome, but you have to do it or the water stays inside their bodies all the time. So you pop the heads out and you turn them upside down. Just be careful of where you set the heads, because it can be kind of scary for the kids to walk in and see like baby heads drying there. One time we did an activity at my house, a birthday party like thing, and we had done a bunch of baby washing, and I popped the heads off so they could dry, and then my pool guy came to clean the pool, and he said, you know what, I know you do a bunch of stuff here and a lot of activities with kids. He goes, but that absolutely freaked me out. He came in and he saw all these heads lined up, and I know we got a good laugh out of that. So baby washing is something that you can do to extend the Rockabye Baby Lullaby. The next one that I have over here is the extension that we're going to offer you from Hickory Dickory Dock, which I'll read. Hickory Dickory Dock, the mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck 1, the mouse ran down, hickory dickory dock. And the concept here that we're pulling out to get it out of the circle time carpet is the idea of going up and going down and going up and going down. Of course, you can bring in clocks and watches, and if you're so inclined, you could actually allow the kids to, look inside, especially if you have an old wind-up clock. You can bring watches in, you can listen to them. Some of you who are like under 30, you have no idea what a watch is anyway, and you probably don't want kids to use their phones. So you might have to ask somebody if you can borrow some watches and bring those in. But you can put it out, and you got fine motor. They can take it apart. You can get a magnifying glass, look in, and see what's happening inside. The other extension that we'd like to offer you is what we call ramps and pathways, which is not our original idea. It's actually coming out of some great work that's happening in the University of Northern Iowa. And I took a class from them and learned so much that not only did I want to go back to the environment in the large, like big, huge yard and start making a bunch of ramps with gutter and cove molding, but even bringing it inside, even for some of our younger children. So we took paper towel tubes and just really simply cut the tops off. And you can actually provide ramps and pathways experiences for little guys simply by offering small balls, ping pong balls, and paper towel tubes. And I also know you probably have lots of these. And the same idea here, something going up and something coming down. Also outside on your yard, if you have a slide, I'd love to invite you to start doing slide painting. What is that? You take your big slide and you tape some paper down your slide. And at the top of the slide, you're gonna have a tray with a little bit of paint and get some balls. And then you can dip the balls in the paint and then roll the painty balls down the slide. And somebody will wanna be at the top to roll them down, and somebody's gonna wanna be at the bottom to run and chase them. The next one is Hey Diddle Diddle. Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see such a sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon. And some of the examples that we have here too for some of the extensions, there are also actually more books. So even though the nursery rhyme is still literacy, the extensions that we want to offer for you today are also book related. One of my favorite books is The Cow That Went Oink. And I don't know if you've read it, but it is a funny, funny, funny book. Of course, Goodnight Moon is an obvious extension with some of the characters that are in the poem. And if you haven't heard this one, this book is called Spoon. And I'd actually like to read you this one. The dish ran away with the spoon. Let me get to the beginning. This is Spoon. And this is Spoon's family. On Sundays, Spoon goes to visit his Aunt Silver. He has to be on his very best behavior there because she's very fancy and very proper. Goodbye, darling. Ta-ta. At bedtime, Spoon likes to hear the story about his adventurous great-grandmother who fell in love with a dish and ran off to a distant land. Lately, though, Spoon had been feeling blue. What's wrong, said his mama. You look a bit out of shape. Oh, nothing, said Spoon. It's just that, I don't know, all my friends have it so much better than me. Like Knife, he's so lucky. He gets to cut. He gets to spread. I'll never get to cut or spread. Yes, Knife is pretty spiffy that way, isn't he? And Fork. Fork is so lucky, she gets to go practically everywhere. I bet she never goes stir crazy like I do. Fork does get in and out and make herself useful, doesn't she? And Chopsticks. They are so lucky. Everyone thinks they're really cool and exotic. No one thinks I'm cool or exotic. Those chopsticks are really something else, aren't they? Meanwhile, If only Spoon knew what his friends were saying at that very same minute. Spoon is so lucky, said Knife. He's so fun and easygoing. Everybody's so serious with me. No one's ever allowed to be silly with me like they are with Spoon. Spoon is so lucky, said Fork. He gets to measure stuff. Nobody ever gets to measure with me. Spoon is so lucky, said Chopsticks. He can go places all by himself. We could never function if we were apart. That night, after bedtime stories, Spoon's mama turned off the light, tucked him in, and said, "You know, Spoon, I wonder if you just realize just how lucky you are. Your friends will never know the joy of diving headfirst into a bowl of ice cream. They'll never know what it feels like to clank against the side of a cereal bowl. They'll never be able to twirl around in a mug or relax in a hot cup of tea." Spoon had not thought of it that way before. He laid awake in bed for a long time. His mind was racing. He felt so alive. There was only one thing to do. "Mama, Daddy, I can't sleep." "Come, snuggle. Come, Spoon." And so he did. The other thing that you could do would be more of a dictation experience for the kids. You've got a plate and some spoons. Pretty simple. You can glue spoons right onto the plate, kind of like a collage experience. And if you're so inclined, you could even get a 3x5 card, and with older children, ask them to dictate to you, where would your spoon go? Where would your plate go? If your dish ran away with your spoon, where would they go? And you could solicit answers from them and potentially keep track of them on the wall on a big sheet of paper, or maybe right there on each individual child's plate. Moving right along. Little Miss Muffet is the next nursery rhyme, probably a popular one that most of you know. Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating her curds and whey. Along came a spider and sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away. And the obvious extension here is definitely focusing on the spider. Spider, spider, spider. One of the activities that we used to do a lot with the children was straw blowing painting. And I offer this here for you mostly because we found that over the years, the children started to project onto this project that they thought it looked like spider webs. I'm drip dropping some of the paint right here onto my paper, and then I have my straw, and I'm gonna blow the paint. You have to be careful that they don't blow too hard because you don't want anybody to pass out. So although I would not ever say, today we're making spider webs by blowing paint, we have found that children projected that language onto their paper. So that's straw blowing paint. The other book extension that's an easy extension right off of this is my other favorite, The Spider and the Fly. "Come into my parlor," said the spider to the fly. We read this one year, and I was very curious to see how the children reacted to it, and they absolutely loved this story. It actually turned into a project that lasted weeks. They actually got newspaper, and some of them were pretending to be the spiders, and some of them were pretending to be the flies, and they were outside, and they were wrapping each other up, and they were trying to suck the blood out of each other, and they wanted to, adhere each other to the fence, and they wanted to be taped up. It was absolutely crazy. It just kept going and going and going. And they're like, Miss Lisa, my web is like the fence and tape me to the fence. And there's a part of you that's like, I'd like to tape you to the fence, but you can't tape the kids to the fence. You just can't do that. So we took a lot of pictures so that the parents could see what was going on, because that language goes back after dinner and they start talking about, Miss Lisa, tape me to the fence. But they were pretending to be the spiders, and they were chasing and wanted to eat the flies and catch them in their web. And one of the kids made a huge spider wings, not spider wings, fly wings out of newspaper. And it just kept going and going and going and going and going. And I just wanted to tell you that story because I never planned on that. We read the book just to see how the kids were going to respond to it, and it turned into this huge dramatic play activity that lasted for weeks outside. The other thing that they wanted to do is ended up making a big spider. So we got a big trash bag, and we stuffed it up, and we asked them, how many legs should the spider have? So we ended up making this big, huge spider that we had suspended from the classroom for the rest of the classroom year. So you never know what's going to happen when you throw it out there for the kids. And then the next one that I have for you is Humpty Dumpty, another classic that probably all of you know. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. And the obvious focus here is going to be on the eggs. Eggs, eggs, eggs. I have pages and pages of egg activity ideas in my Fizzle Bubble Pop and Wow science book, so I invite you to check that out as a resource. Also, of course, Emma's Eggs is another really good book that would kind of keep that egg extension going. And green eggs and ham. It's not really a preschool classroom if you haven't made green eggs and ham. And if you haven't done it yet, I will give you a little bit of advice that if you want to actually make green eggs, you put blue food coloring into your egg mixture. I'll also remind you that a lot of times kids enjoy making green eggs and ham, but sometimes don't want to eat it. And that's okay. The process is going to be more important than that end product. So read Green Eggs and Ham, and then you can cook yourself some breakfast. Little Lumpty is a book that is kind of a little bit of a spoof off of Humpty Dumpty. I like to point out and remind my audience, though, that the spoofs of some of the fairy tales and the spoofs of some of the nursery rhymes don't really have any context to the children if they don't know the original rhyme in the first place. So before Little Lumpty is actually a book that you'd read or that they would even understand, you have to make sure that they're familiar with the Humpty Dumpty poem. In the town of Dumpty, there was a high wall, and Humpty Dumpty had fallen from it a long, long time ago, but people still remembered him. Every day, the children played by the wall and said, Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Little Lumpty loved that wall, and he always dreamed about climbing to the top. Don't ever do that, said his mama. Remember, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. But Lumpty could not stop thinking about that wall. And one day on his way home from school, he found a ladder. How convenient. And he decided to drag it over to the wall. He climbed up and up and up and up, and he said, oh, there's my house and there's my school. I can almost touch the clouds. Lumpty was so excited that he danced and danced. Oh, if only my friends could see me now. But then he looked down. And that was a big mistake. His legs started to shake and tremble. Oh no, he said, I don't think I can get back into that ladder. What if I'm not home by dinner? It was getting dark and the birds were flying home, but Lumpty could not move. Suddenly, he remembered the fall. This is my favorite page. I love that it goes back like sepia, like it's an old picture. Help, help, said Lumpty, help, help. Everyone in town rushed outside to see what was wrong. How can we save him, said an old man. We need a big blanket, said his mama, so she ran home to get one. They stretched out the blanket at the bottom of the wall. Jump, Lumpty, jump, jump, Lumpty, jump. So Lumpty took a deep breath, and he jumped and he threw himself into the air, and he bounced once, twice, 3 times and came safely to rest on the blanket. Oh, Mama, I'm so sorry, but I just had to see what it was like up on top. He was very glad to be home. I still love that wall, and he whispered that to the moon just before he fell asleep. Great book, great story. Not going to have any context if they don't already know the Humpty Dumpty rhyme. And to keep talking about the spoofs, I would like to make sure you know about this book. This book is called Monster Goose, and in it are all sorts of spoofs, and I just get so excited. I'm going to read you just the first couple of them. Old Monster Goose, when conditions did suit her, pecked out these rhymes on a laptop computer. This is one of my favorites. Mary had a vampire bat. His fur was black as night. He followed her to school one day and promised not to bite. She brought him out for show and tell. The teacher screamed and ran, and school was canceled for a week, just as Mary planned. Little Miss Mummy lay on her tummy, smoking a big fat cigar. A very large spider resided inside her because she kept all her guts in a jar. You need to get this book, especially if you work with school agers, because they're just going to eat this up. They're just going to eat it up. Humpty Dumpty swam in the sea. Humpty's sunscreen was SPF 3. Because he was so lightly oiled, dear Humpty ended up hard-boiled. I'm jumping ahead. I don't have time to read all of them to you. Which one am I going to? Oh, this is a good one. Parents hate this one. Cannibal Horner sat in the corner eating a people pot pie. He bit his own thumb and cried, yum, 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 what a tasty young morsel am I. And I've got one more for you, if I can find it. Give me a second. I probably should have marked these pages. Here it is. The itsy-bitsy spider climbed up the warthog's snout. The warthog grabbed a hanky and tried to blow it out. The little bloke was blasted all the way to Spain, so the itsy-bitsy spider did not go up there again. Thank you very much.